Hello and welcome to Bargain Bin. It's a video game podcast where each week we talk about recent games that are under $15 as if you were sifting through the bargain bin at your most favorite video game store and finding some gems, maybe some farts as well. And we're going to talk about which ones are farts and which ones are gems shortly. So Jamie, do you want to go ahead and introduce our game for this week?
Certainly, Jonny. So this week we ended up playing a game called Orbyss. It is a logic-based indie puzzle game. And when I say puzzle game, it is truly just a puzzle game. There's not much story behind it, but that does not mean that it is lacking in any substance or joy. I think, as we'll both hear later on, I think we both really enjoyed this game. I was caught smiling many a times while playing this game. But it was released on October 29th, so pretty recently, by developer Misty Whale, who also published the game. I believe this was a solo dev, maybe their first game, at least published under the Misty Whale name. I believe the developer is from Paris, France. And essentially in this game, you are just orbs, and you're trying to solve these different puzzles to progress through this ethereal, abstract, sci-fi, and beautiful world. And you have to coordinate between the orbs. There's some time manipulation, some different sound puzzles. There's really a lot of different things you could think of in this puzzle game. This game is currently available on Steam. It's on sale, I believe 15%, but its normal price is $14.99, and I believe it's only available on Steam. Jonny and I both played it on our Steam Decks, and it worked great with that. I believe Jonny tried it on the PC right before recording. Jonny, you want to mention how it went on the PC?
Yeah, on the PC, I think somewhat similar to Launderly. Weirdly enough, the camera angle is dictated by the mouse. So it's a little bit sensitive depending on your mouse settings, which I found somewhat off-putting compared to kind of the twin stick camera controls that you get with a controller. That said, it still worked great on the PC. So I think player's choice here, although if it were up to me, I would recommend playing it with a controller.
Yeah, that was the vibe I got to. It felt pretty easy to move around with a controller and felt like it was maybe intended for that style of play.
Yeah, and I love being our little Steam Deck guinea pigs for games because, this game has 30 reviews on Steam. It's pretty not well known. And so being able to test it out and seeing just how much work the developer put into making it, controller level, playable and enjoyable, it was really cool to see.
Certainly. Maybe if this podcast doesn't work out in terms of a plethora of listeners, Steam can hire us to just put in the status on if new games are Steam Deck compliant.
I mean, they do verify, so hey, we could be Valve's newest employees to Steam Deck verify any game. Wouldn't that be a twist of fate? Jamie, let's dig in a little bit here. Our first question on our plan is it fun? I would love to hear you kind of talk about, is it fun, the kind of core loop and mechanic that you have going for these orbs, and why I caught you smiling when you were playing, even though you were a little sick this week.
Yeah, is it fun? I would give it a certain yes. I think I read a review on the Steam website that someone had given, or just a little quote that said, the developer knows what makes puzzles fun. And I think that really rang true for me. Like I mentioned, you came into the room a few times and caught me just smiling as I was going through solving some of the puzzles. And I think it's just because the puzzles are innovative and creative. They're more, I would say, coordination based, not necessarily reaction time or things like that. But you really have to get kind of clever on how you coordinate pieces, and it can be really frustrating and infuriating at times. And then once it clicks, it's like you get a little brain blast. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm a genius. But then you realize that the developer is more of a genius because they actually created the puzzle. So I would give it a resounding yes. One thing I was thinking when I was playing this game is that it kind of reminds me of the shrines in Breath of the Wild, but just 10 times that. I think in those shrines there's some time manipulation elements and also glowing orbs in a sort of sci-fi environment. And I think this game felt nostalgic to me, if Breath of the Wild shrines can be considered nostalgic at this point in time, because they give a very similar vibe.
Yeah, definitely. And just looking at a corollary here to add to your description, it's very like Portal-esque. So we were mentioning Valve earlier. That's Valve's classic puzzle game. They had Portal 1, and then Portal 2 was known for its multiplayer. In this one of the things the developer was saying to kind of sell the game was like, play multiplayer with yourself. So one of the interesting mechanics is that, maybe you have 2 or 3 orbs, but you can switch between 2 of them. So a lot of the puzzles are based on like, where do I put the orb that I can't control? And then what is the time sequence that I need as far as like, I need to move forward with this orb I can control and then switch back to the orb that's farther behind. And an interesting part about it is there's a number of mechanics that you start out with, like any classic puzzle game, and then it builds upon it as you move throughout the levels. So you start with these basic like, oh, you can, drag one orb along with another, or you can point one orb where to go. Then you get the switching between it. Then you get some sound-based puzzles where you kind of have to play a little melody based on the sequencing of your orbs. And as far as the world goes, we'll talk about this a little bit later, not to put the cart before the horse, but it is very inspired by kind of a Portal-esque sci-fi environment where you get these little weird things that you can like press a button and destroy. You get these like slides, you get this very bright kind of futuristic looking world, but you're just these orbs and you're trying to go and navigate it. And I think that the main way that I found this tickling my brain was just like Jamie said, when you find a solution to one of the puzzles, it's less like having to dig super deep into the mechanics and more thinking about sequencing, just like she said, as far as like, oh, I just forgot that I could like pop this one orb up here, then go back to the beginning and then, play this melody, switch between them, and then I'm already up there without having to activate that slide like I thought I had to.
Yeah, and I also want to mention that I really appreciate and enjoy how the game is broken up. There are, to my knowledge, 8 chapters, unless there are some hidden chapters from the menu that get revealed later. And each chapter is broken up into about 6 rooms. And every time you complete a room, your progress is saved and you can go back to that. You can also go back and replay any of the rooms. There are certain achievements and hints of being like, oh, you can complete this room without ever switching orbs or without dying or like your orb falling off the cliff. So there are kind of some fun achievements you can go back to. But I would say the way it's broken up, I was thinking about how it'd be a really great game that you could play like on a commute to work. Like if you take a train, you could like complete a room or 2 while you're on the train, or just any short little bits of time where you don't want to do something completely involved, but just want a fun little game or puzzle to solve in some time that you're waiting. And so that was something that I really appreciated about it and enjoyed.
Yeah, totally. I think this is the perfect game to have just downloaded on your Steam Deck or however you like to play. And it's a nice like palate cleanser, brain engager. I think especially I like to have one of these alongside when I'm playing a longer RPG or a grindy game or a more narrative focused game that, can kind of leave a very specific taste in your mouth. And this game is just a delightful like puzzle game. It's really bare bones as far as what it's trying to do, and it does it very well. So to kind of activate your brain in the morning, like Jamie said, on your commute, or just in between sessions of consuming other media on the weekend, I think it really does what it sets out to do.
Certainly. And I know I mentioned kind of the art and the environment of the game in the introduction, but to dive deeper into that, Jonny, what did you think of the setting and the orbs and the art and the rendering?
Yeah, originally the art style for me was, very sleek. It's not my favorite. I like to have a little bit of like a more, I guess, hand-drawn or like stylized I don't want to say stylized, because this game is very self-confident in exactly what I said before, what it's trying to do, which is kind of this futuristic, like I said, sleek environment. It's not my favorite, but I think it is executed on very well. It does look pretty much exactly like Portal, but just with orbs, or, something in those kinds of sci-fi genres. And I think it is immersive. That's one of the things that struck me about it as I played more, where initially I was like, well, this game, I can tell it's doing what it's doing well. It's not my favorite, as I said, but when I played it, I found myself, whether it is, clearing a room or clearing a chapter, like playing all the way through that natural end point when I could, because I realized how just how immersive and unbroken kind of the design was. You're never encountering something that looks like it shouldn't be there. It's all very cohesive, and in my opinion, well done. What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I think something I was initially worried about was just getting kind of tired of the art and the setting. But I think, and this probably coincides with what you mentioned of them layering on different mechanics to the puzzles or things that you can do, is that I felt like each chapter there were pretty, I guess, subtle, honestly, changes to the setting and the art, or just like the room you're in and the atmosphere that coincided then with the different mechanics that were being introduced for your puzzles, that I feel like actually kept the game like very refreshed. Like I just finished chapter 6, so I have 2 chapters left, and I didn't feel like any of it got stale at some point. Like I've still been excited when I've felt ready to pick it back up and try out the next chapter.
Definitely. Another word for the art style that I just feel like would be a bit of selling the game short if we didn't mention is futuristic. It's very futuristic in its design.
Yeah, certainly. And I don't know, so I haven't played the Portal games. I know you have, but I was looking at the trailers for them because I knew this game was maybe inspired by that or somewhat resemblant of that. And I don't know if it was just the trailers on Steam that seemed not as good of a quality, but
they're just old. So
okay.
Portal, I think the original Portal came out in like 2006 or 2008, and then Portal 2 came out maybe 5 years after that. So it's been a decade since the most recent Portal game. So yeah, this looks a lot better, less pixelated. The 3D graphics aren't as, in quotes, retro, but that's just a product of the times. But you're right in thinking that this does look better than Portal if you were to compare the two.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, that makes sense then on those trailers looking the way they did. But this game definitely is very clean, and especially on the Steam Deck, like a tiny screen, I feel like it was very pleasing to look at with the futuristic art.
100%. And just mentioning the Steam Deck there and in the context of puzzle games, one of the things that I'm always looking out for when playing stuff on my Steam Deck is, could I be playing this on my phone? Balatro and like other deck builders are ones like that where I'm like, I maybe should have just bought this on my phone instead of on the Steam Deck, because those have all gotten mobile releases because they're so popular. But one thing I really appreciated about Orbyss, or Orbyss, which is like abyss with orbs, which I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention. One of the things about Orbyss is that I really enjoyed how, it uses kind of the twin stick camera angle, and it uses left trigger and a lot of the sort of like controller-y buttons, which makes it, something that is a very unique and uniquely video gamey experience as far as like playing it on a handheld, and it being, most easily playable, most easily enjoyed in that context. So that's also something that I just really appreciated about it. Moving on, Jamie, the sound design in this game I think is very cohesive with the rest of it. Just what we've talked about as far as Misty Whale, looking at a lot of the details and doing them right. You've got this ethereal soundtrack that kind of, sounds like electronic music, but it's very ambient. So it's not like, pulsing or anything. It's more kind of background music, somewhat soothing even, I would say, which blends really well when the sort of music-based puzzles come into it, because they're offering a bit of a melody on top of the background noise. And just as far as the sound effects go, I think they're, really well done as well. You have kind of the ball falling off noise. You have the, when you interact with different parts of the environment, you have those sound effects going, and they all sound great and I think are at the right levels, and that's something we have to talk about for indie games, as we learned last week. So I think it's done very well. Is there anything you have to add?
Not too much. I agree with everything you said. I think maybe my only note is that some of the sound puzzles were the only parts where I got a little more confused or found, honestly, maybe a little less enjoyable. I think they were nice for freshening up the puzzles and just giving you something different to do. But I do think they were maybe like harder to pull off in the sense of just really pleasing puzzles to solve, but they did keep things fresh. And it is also good to note that the sound puzzles have an option in the menu where you can enable visual cues for them. So if it is something where you're playing the game in a loud environment on a busy train, there are options to still be able to get through those parts without being able to hear things very clearly. But I just completed a room, I believe in chapter 6, where there was a sound puzzle that was pretty subtle. Like, I didn't really realize what was going on until I turned on the visual cue, and then I realized that there were some sounds happening that I wasn't noticing. So while that's a unique aspect of the game, I also think maybe that is an aspect of the game that could have used a bit more improvement with more time.
It's nice also that you mentioned the visual element that you can toggle on and off, because that's an accessibility feature as well for gamers who are deaf or have trouble hearing. But I think that I would agree, and I almost take a different tact to why I didn't enjoy them as much, and that's because I was getting stuck. And the melody just kind of replays, and so I found myself going a little bit wild in the head listening to that too much, and wanting to get through it kind of not out of a place of joy, but out of a place of being on tilt and not wanting to be mocked by this melody I couldn't play anymore. I do think, just explaining how those work, like, it's not like you're doing anything different than rolling a ball around on screen, kind of Super Monkey Ball-esque, which is what you're doing kind of for the entire game. But the way you play the melodies is by kind of passing through a certain ring at a certain time. So sometimes, you'll go through a slide and there will be a ring, or you'll be on top of a bridge and you'll kind of take the bridge out from underneath an orb and it'll fall through and go through a ring, and that's how you play each note in the melody.
Yeah, I also agree on the melodies taunting you at times. It probably would be a nice feature if there was a way to replay the sounds with the button after they've played a few times. I think that could be a nice improvement to removing the incessant melody playing back at you over and over again.
Unfortunately, I would agree that incessant is the right word. Moving forward, any other thoughts before we tackle our endorsements for this one and hear about our new segment, which we're really excited to introduce?
I don't think so. I feel like we mostly covered it, and any remaining thoughts we should get to in our endorsement section. Yeah, nothing I would add.
Amazing. I'll hop right in with my Well, actually, Jamie, I want to hear yours first, because I think mine's going to be a little bit more exciting, since I'm not as much of a puzzle game person as you. Let's leave the listeners in suspense.
Well, I was kind of hoping you would give a more maybe realistic review on the not puzzle gamer side of things, but maybe you still will, because yeah, I do think I enjoy the puzzle games more, have played more of them, although I haven't played a ton, but I would give this a great endorsement. I think at the $15 side, you're definitely getting a great quality game, fun. Again, it is pretty much just purely a puzzle game. Like, there's no plot or story or anything with it. So as long as you know what you're getting in that regard and that's what you want, I think you'll have a great experience. If you're not that into puzzle games and want more to your puzzle games, then I would maybe think that you'd want to rethink that, but maybe you can shed more light on that.
Yeah, I think if you're slow like me, you're probably looking at like 10 to 12 hours to finish. If you're quicker at these, maybe somewhere around 8, like an hour per chapter. But I think that's super great value for the quality of game that's here. So I agree that the price is right, especially for what appears to be like a small developer. I would also give this an endorsement. So it's our first double endorsement. It's our first good game in the bargain bin.
Wow. Go Orbyss. We found you deep in that pile.
Indeed. We dug deep into the Steam pile. We found you, Orbyss. Thank you for being with us. As far as like my enjoyment of it, I think you hit the nail on the head for it being a pick up and play game, a kind of like addition to maybe like a 15 to 30 minute playable game at a time. For me, it's not like I want to lose myself in this puzzle world for hours on end. But that being said, I think Orbyss is perfect for maybe a less puzzle inclined gamer who still wants that flavor in their life. You're not going to do better than this one. So it's wonderful that we can get our first double endorse game going, and hopefully we have many more, because when we double endorse, it means we played something worth recommending, and that's something we love bringing to you each week. We wouldn't be doing the show if we brought you all farts all the time, and we hope to have a low fart hit rate, wouldn't you say, Jamie?
I would say it did make me feel more optimistic about our future episodes playing Orbyss this week, and maybe feel a little sad that our first episode experience wasn't as good.
I would have to agree. Moving on, now that we have endorsed our game, talked about our game, we're going to introduce our newest permanent segment called Binnable Moments. Jamie, this is going to be kind of an honorable mentions section that I just didn't call honorable mentions because I wanted to sound different. So Binnable Moments are where we just talk about other media we've been enjoying this week, whether it's games, movies, books, whatever. And I think you have a perfect game for this Binnable Moments section to start off with that you've been playing during your sick times. Do you want to elaborate?
Yes, I've been so excited for this moment. I was the one who searched through the bin this week and proposed some options to Jonny. He chose Orbyss out of the options, and while I was excited about that, I was also sad for this other game that I really wanted to try called Space Chef, which I ended up just pulling out of that bin on my own since I was sick this past weekend, and put in at least 2 long days on it now, and have had a great time. It is a cooking life sim game set in space. It's very Stardew Valley-esque, but with sort of like an art style reminiscent of, would you say, like Family Guy?
Yeah, the art style was pretty off-putting to me, but it knows what it wants to be.
Certainly. I loved it, and I feel like it fits within the space theme really well. I believe it was made by 2 developers from Sweden under the title Blue Goo Games, published maybe by a company called Quali or something along those lines. But it is also $15, a small discount right now. But I personally feel like for that price, if you like fun life sim games, or in the Stardew Valley realm, maybe something a little smaller, a little more goofy, and in space, I think it is a great option. It kept me thoroughly entertained. You're essentially a chef in space taking over your grandmother's business. You get to fly around and explore different planets where you get to find alien food, whether it's killing monsters or harvesting plants, cook those into meals, deliver them to customers, all while slowly uncovering different mysteries and expanding the tools you have access to, how far you can travel to different planets. So there's a lot of open world exploration. There's a lot of fun art, cooking different things. And personally, for $15, I thought it was a great value for what you're getting. Some small glitchiness here and there that you do have to deal with. I played it mostly on the PC, but I believe it's available for Nintendo Switch and maybe PlayStation and Xbox, so I would have to assume that it would work well with a controller as well, but I found it nice to just work with keyboard and mouse. But that is my binnable moment of this week or honorable mention. So if you feel like digging into the pile for a round 2, that is definitely another game that I would endorse.
That's great, Jamie. My binnable moments for this week are I watched The Nightmare Before Christmas for the first time ever this Halloween, and I loved it. I would have been terrified of it as a child, but so I'm glad my parents spared me from it then. Probably would have messed me up more than I am now, but I loved it now, and I thought mainly the songs and claymation were just so striking. I find myself enjoying that stuff more and more, especially when it's combined with spookiness. I also modded my 3DS, which I would totally recommend if you have one lying around. And my proudest moment, which Jamie can tell you about, was I ran up to her and was like, "You got to see this." And I turned it on. It takes so long because it's really old hardware. But when it turns on now, I have a Twin Peaks theme on it, and it plays the Twin Peaks theme song, which I love, and you can get any game you want on it once you mod it. So only do that if you own the game, of course. We don't want to be sued by Nintendo, and so you should only use the ROMs that you own, but it's great. You can download those on an SD card when you have the ROMs from the games that you own, and you can play away. I was playing some Pocket Card Jockey on there, play solitaire, race horses. It's real fun. And you can even get the Twin Peaks theme song. What's not to like? Speaking of Twin Peaks, we also watched another episode of Twin Peaks: The Return last night, and Jamie could see my descent into sadness as we watched throughout the 45-minute episode. But luckily, I had her there next to me to stave that off. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, I feel like I have to check in whenever I find myself removing from a show because it's just getting so wild. I have to be like, Jonny might be getting deeper into sadness.
Yeah, but we worked it out together, and maybe we'll even continue on. I want to see what happens is the problem, but Mr. David Lynch makes it tough sometimes.
There's been a lot going on in the season.
Yeah, so we'll keep you posted here in the bargain bin on all of our goings on. Next week, we're going to have a fun game that's in a completely different genre for you that actually came out a little earlier than Orbyss did, but it's been getting some buzz, and we're excited to cover it. See you then.
Bye.
Soil Day Radio.
For a community of weirdos built on words. Find out more at soildayradio.com.